Hi everyone, requesting everyone to please go mute. That'll be great. Thank you. Let me just mute everyone.
We are live.
All right. Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to yet another session of Culture and Code with Ajey Gore. Today we have with us Gaurav, Shashank, and Hemesh. Ajey will be introducing them more in detail. I'm your host for the day. I'll be coordinating and taking your questions to our panel members. So please feel free to use the chat section, put on all your questions while they're discussing, and towards the end of the session, we'll take up as many questions as possible. So do stay till the end of it. Over to you, Ajey.
Ajey, you're on mute.
Hey guys, thank you. Thanks a lot, Shashank, Gaurav, and Hemesh to join us. I'm joined by one of the most amazing people. Both 1MG and Unacademy started in 2015, while Razorpay started in 2014. Both like Shashank and Hemesh have been like 30 under 30 and whatnot, and Gaurav has been like pioneer on delivering medicines and making life better for all of us. I can't say a lot about these people because they are really my heroes, my ideal, because they created such an amazing ecosystem. One of the things which we do have a kind of a small group within Sequoia portfolio, and these three are part of it, and we kind of debate a lot, right, on many things like how to run org, how to scale, how to hire, which kind of person you want. Do you want to be hands-on or not? And many more things. And that's where we thought that we should have that discussion publicly so people can actually benefit and you can see what it takes to scale an org where Unacademy, Razorpay, and 1MG is there today. So not without any more ado, what I will say is like Shashank, Gaurav, and Hemesh, just please go on one by one and just talk a little bit about yourself, from where you are and why did you start the company and when did you start it and what was the reason? Go ahead, please.
Hey, thanks Ajey. So hey everyone, I'm Shashank Kumar, founder of Razorpay, and look at product and engineering and some of the new initiatives at the company. So I won't talk a lot about Razorpay, just a very brief, quick intro that we've solved for payments and banking problems for all kinds of businesses in the country, be it SMEs, mid-scale companies or enterprises. Right. A little bit about me. So I graduated in 2012 from IIT Roorkee. Worked in Microsoft in Seattle for a couple of years, and then I came back to India to start Razorpay because I truly believed in the Indian startup ecosystem. Right. So, yeah.
Hemesh. By the way, Hemesh is he's a two-time founder with Gaurav Munjal. So they had a company called FlatChat before Unacademy. So that is a good trivia here. Hemesh, go ahead, please.
All right, awesome. First of all, thank you so much for having us. Yeah, little bit about me. I have been an engineer pretty much for the most of my life. Started coding very early on. And then like right out of college, met Gaurav, and it was very clear that, I had some job offers and so on and so forth, but it was very clear that it's better to sort of go for a startup or something like that. And then that's when we started Flat.2 in Mumbai, sold that to Common Floor, built FlatChat within Common Floor. And and another trivia is Sumit, who was the CEO of Common Floor, is now with us. He's leading Graphy at Unacademy. So it's like a life sort of coming back full circle. And 2015, we started Unacademy. Gaurav was running this as a YouTube channel early on, but we wanted to sort of, we thought there was a bigger opportunity in online education. And that's when we started Unacademy in 2015. Since then, now we've grown to like $3.5 billion valuation. Last 2 years have been crazy in general for EdTech as well as us. And we've grown a lot in terms of the team, in terms of systems and processes and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think, and at Unacademy, I look at product design, engineering, and analytics, and yeah, most of those things. So that would be about me. Then Gaurav, you can go next.
By the way, just a clarification, Hemesh is talking about a Gaurav in glowing terms. That Gaurav is not me. That Gaurav is Gaurav Munjal. I just want to clarify that.
No, it's okay. It's fine. Sometimes we can live with the glory, man.
Yeah, no, look, I think my journey has been maybe a little more organic because I'm much older than these guys. So I graduated from IIT Delhi 2001, born and brought up in Kanpur. When I graduated 2001, I was fortunate enough to actually land a job in the Bay Area. And so from 2001 to 2013, worked in the Bay Area. Funnily wrote operating systems. Operating systems code for the first 8 years of my life. And, then I got really tired of enterprise tech. So went to Zynga, which used to make games. And at that time, I ran one of the largest games on the planet, which was Farmville. We had around 20 million daily active users on the platform, around $350 million in annual P&L. So it was just crazy. I think I learned a lot about consumer internet and learned that, this is where I want to be. So 2014 is when I moved back to India. I think the reason to move back to India was very simple. There were two reasons. One was family. I think the second was, like Shashank said, from a technology and impact of technology and startup ecosystem, India was just sort of taking off. And I wanted to be here and see what impact I could make, which could be much, much more real and maybe much bigger than what you would make in the Bay Area. So moved back. I initially didn't start 1MG. I was at HealthCart, and 1MG was actually sort of like a small incubated idea within HealthCart itself. And what we set out initially, and what actually Prashant set out initially to solve, was information asymmetry as a problem, right? So India is weird because it has this concept of branded generics, where you influence people writing prescriptions to write brand names, and because you write brand names, people have to actually get those brand names from pharmacists, right? So even though there are cheaper medicines available, people don't get access to them because their doctors may write more expensive brands, etc. And there are good reasons to do that, but the problem we saw was that most people were not aware. So 1MG started as actually an information platform, one that hoped to arm consumers with better information around healthcare. On top of that, we built transaction platforms. Started with medicines, built diagnostics, followed with consultations, and the idea was to build basically this what we call an outpatient care layer of rails where services would get delivered. Shashank at Razorpay is one of our earliest partners because that's what we used for our payment gateway. So Harshal helped us actually get a lot of those things done because there were a lot of regulatory issues with our industry, and they've been great partners since then. And I think I feel really proud as to what 1MG has achieved in terms of making online healthcare really possible in this country. And from pharmacy to diagnostics to consultations, each one of these are hot areas today for investment and funding. And we are very glad that we sort of led the way on that. So
yeah, actually, all three of you have done amazing stuff. Like, for example, like Razorpay is revolutionized payments, and the kind of things Razorpay is doing. Like whenever we go and talk about integration, I talk to many people. Like Razorpay is always there.
yeah.
What Ravish and others have done with Khata Book, what Gaurav and Hemesh has done with the Unacademy. These are the new age SME and new age tech startups. Like there are a lot of old things. Like the reason I remember these four is that they are very, very new, and they just revolutionize the way we do online businesses, right? So given that, it is just amazing, right? And one of the things which I always think about whenever I look at it, how did you guys navigate in early days when nobody knew you? So that is the first question comes to me, like, because all the founders every day today talking about like, oh, it's so difficult to hire, it's so difficult to manage. But I can tell you, it was always very difficult to hire. It was always very difficult to manage. I don't think, like when I was doing my startup, it was always difficult to hire at that point of time as well. Because when we were starting in like 2013, 2014, like we had like giant e-commerce business who they were paying more. We had taxi businesses who were paying more. And how do we start, right? So it was always difficult to always hire. So I want to think through that. So this talk is about a scaling org. So first thing within a scaling org attribution which comes in is mostly about hiring. So let's hear about you guys talking about that early journey and what did you do?
Yeah, awesome. I can go first. So at Unacademy, I think most of the first, I think 10 employees were either my college friends or they were like Gaurav's, like one of the engineers was Gaurav's school friend and so on and so forth. So you build the initial team with your friends basically, because at that point, nobody else will believe in you enough to drop what they are doing and come and join you, right? You probably don't have enough money to like make somebody move for money, right? So uh, yeah, you build the initial team with your friends and people you have built almost like they are pretty much all of them are like your founders in a way, right? You have built really long relationships with them over the time that you work with. Maybe some of them are from your college and so on and so forth. And that's how like you would see like Flipkart had a lot of people from IIT Delhi, or like some startup where founders are from a particular college. They will have a lot of folks from that college. You hire either your juniors or your seniors or people that you know and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think initial is just that, like you'll have to convince your friends and so on, people who are good, who you value, and sort of bring them on board. I think that's what we did. That's what worked for us.
I'll answer simply that in the initial days, right? Initial 1 year, I think we spent a lot of time on hiring, honestly, and especially the initial members. The initial team, we have this philosophy that we should get people, who are very highly generalist in nature, not very specialized, right? But to have this attitude of get things done, even if they don't get it done perfectly, right? So if I get a backend engineer, let's say, then he can work across, Golang, PHP, infra, AWS, right? All these things, right? We had a front-end engineer who could work across, which now sounds surprising to me. We could work across like Angular and iOS and Android. So it was actually really amazing. It's because otherwise, you have to find like different people for all these different kind of stack. But it was not perfect, but it worked great, right? Because we could move with speed, and these folks can get things done very fast. And same thing on the on the business side as well, like people who can do sales, marketing, operations, all such kind of things, right? And I think the initial like 5 or 10 people that we hired, right, or initial 20-25 people that we hired, we were very careful about them in the sense that they either they're coming from our network, so we know them really well, right, and we admire them in some sense, or or admire their work, early work that is there, or admire their attitude, right? Otherwise, people whom we hired, whom we didn't know, right? I think I used to spend a lot of time with them, close to like 5-6 hours myself, and then more 5-6 hours more some other folks in the team who will spend time just to get to know them and understand whether they'll align with the way we think, the kind of people whom you would want to work with, right? In some sense, I can crystallize now and say whether they really align with our cultural values, right? But there was no culture or no value at that point of time, so it was more me and my co-founders comfort, right? So don't go around like writing cultural values, but rather like think about people like you really want to work with, right? Whom you would want to fight with day in day out, and you would want to go to battle with in some sense, right? So it's like that kind of imagery, and I think that the initial few. Now in hindsight, I can also say that those few folks had an amazing amount of influence on the culture of the organization, right? On the way the organization functions, right? So it's doubly important that you hire like really good folks at the start, even if you take some time, because it pays a lot of dividends later.
Gaurav.
Yeah, no, I think Hemesh and Shashank's covered most of it, but I'll maybe just add a couple of different perspectives. One is I think that at every stage of the organization, the hiring challenges are different, right? I think when you're early on, Today, I'm sure just like us, Hemesh and Shashank are hiring in the hundreds versus back then it was hiring, in the ones and the tens, right? So
Yes.
I think in the early days, what I found worked for us was every hiring was almost like a personalized affair, right? We would spend as founders a lot of time with every engineer who walked through our door. And I think what convinced them then was not the brand, because there was no brand, but our passion,
Absolutely.
right? Our passion, our willingness to solve a problem, right? Really, that's what sold the early guys. And I think we managed to attract also people who were looking for that kind of a ride, right? So I think one is that in those early days, the kind of people that we were looking for, just like Shashank said, generalists, people who were willing to take initiative, maybe were risk takers, etc., was just very different from what we are looking for today. We're looking for risk takers, of course, initiative takers, but we're also looking for specialists, right, who will basically bring in and solve some of the specific problems that we have. So I think that was one key difference that was there in terms of how we used to hire. I think the second really important thing that I have learned, and I cannot emphasize this enough because I have so many people who come to me and who get stuck in this analysis paralysis loop as to whether someone is right for them or not, is that no matter how hard you try, you're always going to make mistakes, right? There are people who are not going to be the right people for you. The day you hire them, you will learn them. So the philosophy that we have followed, at least we followed really well when we were small, was that to acknowledge and accept that mistakes happen, just like in everything else, they will happen in hiring also. But it's not about the mistake, it's about how quickly you correct it, right? And so, like what's an interview? It's like 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, right? But it's only when a person comes in, and we've hired some stellar people, with great background. And when they come in, we found that there's some or the other thing which makes them not work in our context. And I think what we've been very good about, or have been reasonably good about across the years, is just correcting those mistakes the moment we found it, and being empathetic about it, but also being sort of dispassionate about it, right? We want you to find your groove at 1mg, but if you don't find it, we also want to encourage you to find a place where you will be in your groove and actually do well, right? And these two things have actually served us really well over the years.
Yeah. I want to ask this question. What has changed and what has not changed in all these years in terms of hiring? So early days, hiring, referrals and all stuff, right? For example, for me, and I'll give you an example. For me, I did not budge from hiring a person who did not know how to code till the time I was there. And then Gojek changed a lot, and now they're big company, became go-to. I was very fortunate to be part of it. 3 days back, they went IPO and all stuff, which is amazing. But one thing which did not change for me, that I always gave a case release to PMs and I always made leaders at least write the code. And my thought process mostly was to understand, not to know that they know how to write language, but to understand what their thought process is. So I focus a lot on thought process. Whether you write pseudocode or not, doesn't matter. But at least I want to see that. What has, for you guys, what has changed and what has not changed? Gaurav, you should go first because, yeah.
No, look, I think what has not changed for us is the rigor, right? I think the rigors was there on day zero. And the reason I was so passionate about that conversation on the group is that every time we have taken a shortcut to removing the rigor, even a little bit, it's always come back to bite us, right? And so
yes.
I think what we have learned, and we continue to just relearn again and again and again, is that, there's a reason shortcuts are called shortcuts. And when it comes to people and culture, I just don't think that they exist. They just teach you the same lesson over and over again. Right?
I love this. There are reasons shortcuts are called shortcuts. Shashank, what do you think, man?
So I think, because we are now hiring at scale, right? I think having some level of predictability matters a lot, right? So we have tried to see how we can, because there are so many people interviewing, like how we can invest in our, training people to interview really well, right? Because that really determines in the end what kind of people you are able to hire and what kind of experience you are able to give to people, right? So I think we've invested a lot in, getting people up to speed and doing good interviews and giving very good experience to the candidates, which is absolutely important in the earlier days also, but it becomes extremely difficult to manage and scale, as more and more people join you, and all of them join from different places, which may not have the same level of standardization, right? That's one. And I think second, I think we really care about hiring specialists, right? But when I say specialist, right, I actually ask the team, like, is this the best person whom you can hire to build this specific Golang library, right? And that matters a lot, because people's passion matter, right? So someone is really passionate about, hey, I want to just build very good developer infrastructure, right? Or someone is really passionate about, like, I want to build very good checkout front end, right? So I think we index on that. I think we hire for those passions, right? And we hire for that depth that people can bring into the organization, and be the subject matter expert in a certain topic, right? Because if we have, like, the most passionate and most expert people in the company, then I think the company will automatically become, like, ship good products, right? The company will automatically care about the experience that we are giving to customers.
Yep, and it does make sense a lot. One of the things which I think is super important is that how do you define the attributes, right? How do you communicate? How do you make it that everybody understands? And actually, I have seen Shashank's spreadsheets with the attributes they are looking for a person and how they go through it. It's pretty amazing. So one of the values which I realized in early days in scaling is to able to articulate your thoughts in documents, like kind of laying down the constitution of your organization, kind of putting the guiding principles of your organization. So when you guys were scaling, when you guys became kind of mid-sized company, when you hit 100 or 150, what were the, like, top 3 or 4 challenges you guys faced? What were, like, came and hit you as a hard and you did not understand, like, what happened just now? Anything which actually people should be aware of, or you been through? How did you navigate that?
I think, I'm been a very young founder, some sense, and I was very naive. So I think I was very idealistic, at least in the early days, that we don't need to have product managers, we don't need to have engineering managers, right? So, so we didn't have product managers, engineering managers, till almost, like, 60, 65 engineers and double the size of the company, so like 130 people there, right? And I think that was just unmanageable. At that point, I was like, okay, like, I don't know what I have done, right? So this will take some time to undo. So, and we did that as well. And thankfully, we did that. Like, there's a lot of value in having good engineering managers and good product managers. It gives a lot of strength to the organization. But this is what, like, I remember, and there's, like, extremely foolish mistake, but very idealistic. And I think our engineers loved not having managers, honestly. So,
of course,
so
not.
there was
Of course
so there was a huge thing, like, why are we getting one? Because I like having this environment, right? Why do we need managers? Like, you don't understand the problem that I have.
Yeah, I wish we can have this conversation in person. It really so amazing. We sit across a table and all of us. Like, I remember last year when I joined Sequoia, I was talking to Hemesh. Hemesh, I'm going to call you on the spot, but, like, I'm not going to divulge a lot of stuff. And Hemesh was dealing with a bunch of issues, and I was, like, trying to help him navigate. Hemesh, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think.
And those are the scale problems.
yeah, absolutely. I think last 2 years were crazy for us, right? Like, in 2020, we were, I think, almost 30 engineers, less than 30 engineers, like, for the longest time. So I would divide our journey into 3 parts, which is basically less than 10 engineers, then 10 to 35, 40 engineers, and then now from 40 to now 150, and so on and so forth. And at that point, we were just going through that phase where literally people who joined 1 month ago were now supposed to interview the next set of people. And, like, they haven't gotten enough time. They've probably been working remotely. They haven't gotten enough time to understand our values, our system, and so on and so forth. And they are supposed to judge other people. And I think in this, I think one of the biggest help I got was from my VP engineering, that I was able to hire probably at the right time, luckily. And he was somebody who had seen a lot of scale in the past, and he was coming from Akamai, spending 10 years at Akamai, and so on. And the first thing that, like, we worked on together was to sort of create this interview system, that there has to be like these skills that you'll have to judge. The spreadsheets that you're talking about, I think it would be something very similar, but to sort of very clearly articulate that, hey, this is what we're going to judge in every round, and then hopefully it turns out to be a good hire with some luck. And yeah, so I think it was really crazy. And I think one of the point I want to sort of add to our previous conversation was, when you're early in the journey, do not overhire. I think I've seen many people sort of make this mistake where they think that, hey, I have so much work to do, I will just go and hire 70 engineers and I'll divide it into 10 pods and they'll do this and that. That never happens. I think you should not have like even a single person not writing code full time until you touch like 40 engineers or something. I think I would not consider that a mistake if I have to do it all over again any day. I would definitely like not have engineering managers. Let engineers do some of the management on their own. Let it be self-managed.
Actually, we didn't have engineering managers till we were around 75, 80 people.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think very fortunately for us, a lot of our early engineers became technology leads and then became ready to become engineering managers because that's the career path they wanted to pick. And I think that's a really natural way for organizations. Like, I feel very surprised today when I see 20, 30 people engineering organizations have so much hierarchy. And
5 engineering managers.
Yeah, and I find when we were 65, 70 engineers, I almost knew every engineer personally. I think I knew what they were, at least the key ones. I knew what everyone was working on. I haven't written code for a long time now, but I knew what they were doing. I knew what they were going through, what challenges they were facing. We had one VP engineering who used to write code with them, right? And so I just think that's the right way to build an organization. Just keep it flat as long as you can.
Yeah, I'll tell you my experience. Well, I figured out a hack of being hands-on. The hack was to go and find the lowest hanging fruit, like most stupid bug in the system, and try to solve that every week on week. And mostly it is like either configuration bug or infrastructure bug or automation bug. So that allowed me to go through code a lot. So I understood how the hell people are writing code, what is going on, and also gave me the thing, like the first command used to be git blame, like who all contributed this file, what is this going on, and it kind of helped me understand what is different coding style for different people, especially looking at RFPs, looking at things. So that comes to one thing. How do you guys at a scale, when you starting to scale out, that two things which actually starts breaking down in my experience, and you guys add more things which break down. So for me, communication and prioritization breaks. Somebody asked, how do you create, how do you keep the company culture? We'll come to that part. It's tough. It's tough to keep the company culture going. But communication and prioritization. What did you do? How did you deal with it? And how did you scale that? Just speak, guys.
Yeah, so I'll go, right. So, I think communication part, right? I think from day zero, I think I've been like really pushing people to write down their thoughts, right? And I think to this date, like we have got an amazing culture of writing product specs and tech specs, and I think that has scaled really well, better than I think I expected, and mostly because I think we have been at it since day zero, right? And a lot of people are able to now guide others on how to write good specs and how to go for consultation on getting those on those specs and getting more eyes on it, right? And it makes it really wonderful. And we like the philosophy for our products is that we really build it for the long term, right? So unlike a lot of consumer products, we can't change things on the fly, right? So when we put out something, we have to be ready to maintain it for like next 4 to 5 years easy. Like it's not going anywhere, right? So no, be it an enterprise customer or government customer, once they integrate a product, they don't want to change it, right? So we have to be really thoughtful in how we design our products and be ready to support it across different stacks, layers, whatnot, right? So that culture of writing specs, I think, has helped us tremendously. On the other side, on the prioritization, so this one I think took a lot of time to get right. I think in the initial 2-3 years, it was just me and a couple other folks who were just doing prioritization, and we can do it with our intuition in a lot of ways, right? and founder-driven intuition or founding team's intuition is, I think, something which you are very closely aligned, right? So the moment a team starts scaling beyond, I think, maybe 100 people or 150 people or 200 people, I think you get into a prioritization problem, and you get a lot of people who may not be directly attuned to like what you're trying to do as an organization, right? So what has helped there are two things. Like one, we have created pods or autonomous groups, which are sort of a combination of product manager and engineers and designers, like 4-5 engineers, 6 engineers and a designer, right? And they run independently, so they have their own goals that they need to chase for the year or the quarter, but they do their own prioritization in service of those goals. And usually, whoever is the engineering lead or the product lead, within 2-3 quarters, they really understand that they are, even if their prioritization is bad, then they're not going to hit their goals, right? And they kind of come around to doing it better, right? And that OKR process for us, doing this OKR, for those pods, and that's what we rely on, right? So every quarter, like the team does its own OKRs, we have some sort of review, but mostly it's fairly independent. And it's like whatever OKRs you're doing, like you should be meeting it, and we kind of trust people to do the right set of OKRs and the prioritization in service of those goals. And that has scaled for us from the initial like 4-5 pods to now 100+ pods at this point of time, and that process is still working beautifully.
Awesome. Gaurav, Hemesh?
Yeah, so look, maybe I'm a little bit of a realist when it comes to these things. I think that no organization is ever perfect. We are definitely not perfect, right? And I think that for us, when it comes to, let's say, prioritization and communication, it's been an ever learning journey. But it all starts from first acknowledging that you need to have some basis to actually agree to do certain things, right? And the problem starts when there is no basis, and the basis is actually someone's opinion. So one of the things that I think we've done beautifully at 1MG, and I don't think it's that hard to do, is that we have taken out ranks out of why something should be done, right? And I think that's the most important thing that you can do, regardless of which framework you put in. Because if you're in a company where things get done because you're the founder or you're the CEO, then I think eventually it's going to hurt you, because at some point you're going to get in a layer of leadership in the company which will not have the same level of insights or gumption as you do, right? And you will do the wrong thing. So a lot of what our culture in prioritization has been about is that we call ourselves the greedy algorithm, that we will try and do everything.
Like human body.
So I remember at one of the companies I used to work for, my sales head used to call us coin operator, right? And he was like, anytime anyone puts a coin in, I'm basically ready to do a dance and show and tell, right? So I love to think of myself as a coin operated company, right? So if there's an opportunity, we will go after it. And what that has done is that, look, we made a lot of mistakes, gone after opportunities that haven't existed, but we've also learned a lot of stuff about which opportunities are worth going after and which are not. And I think what it also has done is that today, if I go to my team with some harebrained idea, then even at the lowest level, an engineer can actually push back and say, okay, I think that's the worst idea I've ever heard. I'm not going to do this. Why don't you go talk to my PM and then ask them to prioritize this, right? And I think that's one thing that has helped, is it kind of puts this framework where prioritization becomes possible. I think the second is documentation is critically important. But I also want to highlight that in early stages of a company, and again, look, building a payment system that millions of customers are going to use is very different. But for us, we can afford to make mistakes. We can afford to poorly design systems, because we can always go back and write it, right? And sorry, Shashank, but you don't have that. You don't have that.
I agree with you. So, no, absolutely,
yeah, absolutely.
Gaurav, I will say yes to you. The reason is because I built 3 very different systems, which are largest in Southeast Asia. One was Gojek, which is largest transport in Southeast Asia. Then GoFood, which was largest at one point, was the largest outside China, and GoPay, which is wallet. So I wish I would have met Shashank. I wish I would have met Shashank when I was building the damn thing. I pulled my teeth or hairs or whatever you call it. It's like painful. But what you're saying is absolutely right. So at Gojek and GoFood, we could do a lot of iterations and a lot of
Yeah.
ideations, and
Yeah.
we had a lot of slack over there. But on the GoPay, we can't lose a penny. So we had a lot of rigor there. So different,
Yeah.
and actually, you know what?
Yeah.
That's why you three are very unique, and that's why I want to hear those different journeys. It
Yeah,
doesn't
so-
have to be same voice. Yes.
So, yeah, so one thing I want to add is that, if you are in the business like a 1MG, where the cost of iteration is low, right? And the cost of making mistakes is low, because you can go back and fix it, and you can iterate, and you don't have installations, let's say 30 other enterprises who are not going to change your system. Then you have to think at what point documentation and what level of documentation actually makes sense for you. Because documentation, while it adds structure, it also tends to slow you down, right? And so in early stages, if you are not building these deep tech, high tech technology systems for others, I would say maybe don't worry about documentation too much. And even an Excel spreadsheet is good enough to document your use cases. But once you get larger, just today, for instance, 1MG uses Confluence religiously. We document our systems, we document our PRDs, product specs, etc. Because the cost of making mistakes today for 1MG are very high. Not because we can't iterate, because the brand is much more valuable. And when we make mistakes, then the brand gets affected.
Yep. Hemesh.
To add to that, I think it also depends on what you need to optimize for as a company. Like if you need to optimize for stability because somebody else's like bread and butter depends on your product, it's a very different business. It's a very different product. And also, how much do you know about the problem you're solving? I think in most B2C companies, or I don't know, I have never built a B2B company, so can't say that for sure. But at least in our case, we didn't know a lot about what are the needs of the market, and we were just like discovering a lot of those needs while experimenting, while like talking to our learners, talking to our educators, seeing what works, what doesn't work. So we had to optimize for the speed of execution. Like if you have an idea, if you have a feedback, how fast can you put it in production? And sort of our systems are sort of built for that. So of course, relatively low on documentation, because like there's no point documenting if you know that something is not going to stick around like 6 months later, right? So I think every org is very different. Ours is focused on like just shipping stuff out. If you have an idea, how fast can you test it? That's what our org is sort of optimized for. And that basically means how communication happens, who decides the prioritization, who can talk to whom, what Slack channels are made, and so on and so forth. So it sort of boils down to everything that you do. But fundamentally, like what are you optimizing for is like the real question you have to ask. In our case, it was very clearly the speed of execution, and not like it was okay. Like so, I'll give you an example. Like we built a test architecture, right? Like we rebuilt it, I think twice or thrice. We had to do it because like we didn't know how big of like we couldn't expect that at one point we'll have 3 lakh people taking a test at the same time, and they'll be loading questions at the same time, they'll be submitting questions at the same time. So like concurrency would be a problem. Like we learned that very later on, and in that case it took some time, we built it, but there was no point sort of spending all the time early on when we didn't understand the problem fully.
Actually, I just learned one thing. I just observed one thing. We have to talk about your scale. I want to talk about your scale a little bit. Whatever numbers you guys can talk about, please talk about those numbers.
I can go. So look, there are three numbers that we talk about. We do transactions that are in millions every month. And then in terms of traffic, which is, one thing that we really pride ourselves on because we are a healthcare content platform. We are top 20 healthcare website in the world, see over 200 million users every year.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's pretty amazing, actually. Shashank.
Yeah, I think similar. So, I think we process like few million transactions every day, right? More than like, 100 million transactions every month, right? So, and all of these are like, write heavy, like a lot of our systems are write heavy in nature, right? So that requires like a lot of good work on engineering at scale to kind of make it successful, right? And I think, we're a sort of an API first company, being by nature. So we feel like, think close to 100 million probably API requests a day, right? And that's still, I think, increasing, right? I think we still need to prepare for like 10x of that scale in the time to come, right? So yeah, that's what I think we any sale happens anywhere in the country, or any IPL happens, and these things that happen, like, it's and the thing is, like, we can't really prepare a lot in advance for traffic hitting us out of the blue, right? So I think now we have over time come to a place where we are more prepared for any spike kind of events, and handle that much better. I think one of the other trend that I'm seeing in last 1 year is that we get a lot of attacks on our systems now. Might be the reality for other companies also, in the group. But that was not there like a couple of years ago. And now I think we get attacked on our system, some sort of DDoS attack or something else, like, on a pretty regular basis, which just increases the scale.
Dude, at Gojek, we had around 50% or more than 50% attack traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give you a thing, we used to do around at peak, we did around 150 million API calls per second. And we had around 100 million app impressions per day. That means 100 million times people opened our app and closed it. That is still just like big problem for us, because we had to load user profile and whatnot, right? It's not actions, it's just 100 million times people opened the app and closed it. So yeah, I understand. Hemesh,
hey Ajay,
tell us.
By the way, I think one topic that would be very interesting, and I don't know how many people grokked what Shashank said, is that they are write-heavy system. And actually, there are very few internet systems which are write-heavy systems. They're mostly read-heavy systems, right? So I think that'd be a great talk to do sometime.
Actually, yes, I really want to have that talk with so I want to have this architecture talk at one point of time, because we were also very write-heavy system.
Yeah, and even Farmville was. We were a game, so we were write-heavy.
Dude,
system.
you lived in Facebook, but you had amazing. I love Farmville.
So we were like
those sheets, man, those sheets.
Those sheets, yeah. And we had millions of writes happening every second. And we used to take down our backend analytics systems as well. So I think that's the first lesson I learned, was that everything they taught me about the internet being a read-heavy system is actually incorrect, because I got the wrong one.
Dude, except Wikipedia, nothing is read-heavy.
Wikipedia is perfectly read-heavy.
Yeah. We should totally talk about, like, building a write-heavy system is super important, because and the thing is, it write once and read once. Like, for example, for us, once payment is done, nobody goes and looks back that payment at all.
Yeah.
Like, for same maybe with Shashank as well, right? Like, once payment is processed, very rarely somebody wants to go and look at the history, like maybe one or two times. Yeah,
a few times, but it's not comparable. Like,
it's not like you write once and you read 100 times. It doesn't happen at all.
I think there are people who do that. You're surprised. Like, there are people who would just keep polling our system and keep reading from it. I don't know, for whatever reason. Like, we usually go back and tell them, look, it's not correctly designed, but then people stick to their design choices or whatever they have made, right? So
yeah. Yes, Hemesh, you were saying something. Like, how many people you are teaching every day, man? Come on, tell us.
Yeah. It's in a couple of million people. But I think for us, the biggest challenge is the amount of time people spend on the app. It's like we do like almost 5,000, 6,000 classes every day. And there are classes in which these are all live classes, right? So there's live content that has been sort of broadcasted to a bunch of learners. And basically the tech that we built, the hardest part for us was to sort of take it to zero latency. Because, right, like when a class is going on, you want it to be extremely interactive. So it should basically work like how a Zoom call works, right? Zero latency, because you can't have delay. Because if you need to sort of, the educator needs to create polls and so on and so forth. So that was a massive challenge. So we built it on WebRTC, but then scaling WebRTC to like up to 50,000 people, 50,000 learners in a class was then like the next big challenge. So, and another third challenge, like I mentioned, was like people spend an insane amount of time on the app, right? Because like your learning happens within the app, you take tests in the app, you read notes in the app, you practice in the app, so everything you do is within the app. Your app has to be, your front end has to be really solid, and that making sure that it is stable, it works reliably, it's bug free. That was like a massive challenge. So working on Android, working on a web front end, that has been like a big focus for us. And making sure it's fast, right? Like, because you use it every day for like literally years. Like, we have people who've been using like our app for literally 3-4 years continuously straight. So then how do you sort of make sure that,
It's interesting. Like we are closing our arc, and we can extend if you guys want, but I want to talk about one very important thing. Like, see, the thing is that two aspects I want to talk about, and we should try to cover it. First aspect is, what is the top 3-4 things when you're scaling up? You should, like, if you distill it down, like for me, it's like be more disciplined. I should not talk about it because it's your stage. But yeah, what is top 3-4 things people should think about, like when you're scaling up? Once you have to become more, let's say, become more process-oriented. That is one part. Second part, which I want to learn from you guys, is that what has been your thought process in terms of what would you not build today, and what all things you will buy, and how should people think about build versus buy versus outsource? Those are the two questions I had. So you can start with the last question, and then we can come to first question if you want.
Hemesh, you should go first this time.
Yeah, we have bought a lot of things. Like, we believe in buying. Like, if it's not something that like only you can solve, just buy. Or if it's not something that will directly either impact your business or your customer experience or your growth or something like that, just buy. Basically, buy is the default, build as the extreme last resort, and so on.
And when would you outsource?
We don't, to be honest. Like, we haven't done much of outsourcing. We believe that like, you can just build systems in such a way that you don't have to outsource a lot. So we haven't done a lot of outsourcing. But yeah, we buy as much as we can. Like, data pipeline, go ahead and put like segment. Like, it might cost a lot. Like, sometimes the pricing is crazy, but it will still be cheaper than building it on your own, managing it on your own, and so on and so forth. And that's not your core skill, right? So
yeah, absolutely agree on that.
Your customers are not paying you for solving that problem. Solve the core problem. And yeah, it was relatively easy for us to sort of just focus on solving customer needs.
Yeah, Gaurav, we should go. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'll be a little honest. I think the one thing that I think I could have done much better is I could have built, muscle memory in an organization to use outsourced resources much better. And what I think is that when you have a strong technology team, like I'm sure with Hemesh, Shashank, you guys too, we tend to think that we can build everything better than what anyone else has built, right? And we always find faults. कि यार ये तो ऐसे ठीक से नहीं बना, we can do it so much better. 2 दिन में बना देंगे, right? And if you remember, Ajay, we've had a long conversation about this on the CTO group as well, that we almost never take into account the cost of maintenance and enhancement. We always take into account, right? So I think the one thing, if I could go back and change, or if one advice I can give is, I think if you are starting today, you need to understand, you need to build capability within your team to use outsourced resources effectively, right? And I think what that's going to do is that it's going to take a lot of pressure off of you, and it's going to help you accelerate innovation in areas where products may exist, but they may not be where you need them to be, right? And it's an opportunity. So we suck at this. We are trying to improve this. But as a mature organization, it becomes extremely hard, right? Because it's not our culture, right? I have failed in the last 1 year to try and get my teams to work with outsource, to the point where I've now said that this is an OKR for the team, that if they don't meet it, then I'm going to cut someone's appraisal this year.
Dude, you're awesome. Like, I'll tell you, like, very few people actually go through this kind of candor. Thank you for saying that up here.
So I think it's extremely important. That's one. And I think the second thing is, you need to buy as much as possible. I agree with Hemesh 100% that if you cannot identify why something is critical for you to build yourself, right? And this comes to some amount of judgment call. I don't think you need to build it yourself, right? We have made a lot of mistakes where there are things. So I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, we built this whole customer support console, right? I think it made sense back at the time when we built it. But today, guess what? We are in the process of replacing it because someone actually has potentially a better system which actually takes care of the whole customer relationship management and the customer life cycle better than we would ever want to spend resources on it, right? And so, these things are hard, but when it comes to, for instance, warehouse, picker productivity, route optimization, these are core skill sets that we have because they affect the business, they affect the bottom line of the business, and they affect customer experience, right? But there are areas where people have done a better job. So all those problems, you don't need to do them yourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shashank?
Yeah, I think so. I think I push the team a lot, right? That they should figure out like what they can buy, right? And I think we have been like fairly good in terms of buying software from outside and using those, right? But I think I've seen the team struggling with it quite a bit because of the unique nature of our business. Like we are pretty regulated, right? So, you always start looking for certifications for vendors and most of the vendors are not like localizing their data in India, and that becomes a challenge, right? Or they are not having security certifications, and that becomes a challenge. I think we are slightly, picky about having these things with the vendor, so that sort of does become a challenge. But I think what I've instituted as a culture, right, around in the company is that when you are thinking of building any platform service, right, as part of tech stack, you need to do a market analysis, right? You need to go and use like 2 or 3 services even if at a very small scale, right? And come back and report on your experience, right? So it does 2 things, right? First, it helps us get a very objective view of like what is out there in the market. And second, now the engineer knows like, what the competition has, right? It's upsells, right? If we are really going to build it internally, like what the bar is, right? So it actually motivates them to build better stuff, right? And I think third thing that has helped us is that if you build anything internally, like you are responsible for its adoption. So we actually tie in the whether you get it through a vendor or you build it internally, like you are supposed to make it successful. So if it is not successful, I absolutely don't care like what the kind of engineering that you have done there, right? Like ultimately, if it is not adopted, it's pretty much a failure.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely, yeah. I agree with you. Like I'll summarize this. Like, so I have the same purpose. Actually wrote a blog post about it on Sequoia's blog called Age of Assemblers is Here. And the people who assemble, they win. And somebody was asking me, I have a very good example. And this example is like, we can't put real world example into our thing, but I example of Boeing, right? Boeing makes planes. And what is plane's score? Is people say yes, engine, and Boeing does not make an engine. It's a Rolls Royce or G which makes engine. So when Boeing can go that extreme in terms of assembling a plane, we can go some other extreme as well. Also, I say whenever you think it's 2 people or 2 weeks, it's a 1 person and 1 year. That means you will end up with one of the most expensive FTEs cost in a year to maintain that software. That's a total cost of ownership. Whoever is your most expensive person, that is your total cost of ownership for that software, which you estimate to be 2 weeks and we are done. Because something or other, like running cost is complex. Like somebody's putting some hours, disk is getting full, something other is happening, load is increasing, some random things keep going, right? So yeah, I agree with you. So okay, now first question, what would be your top 3-4 problems or advice or whatever, like take care of this, take care of this, take care of this when you're scaling the org?
as long as you can take care of the scale, I think it's really like you're on top of the game. If you're growing fast, I think what matters is like serving the scale, right? Everything else is sort of secondary. But I think our process has been very simple, right? Like always keep finding hotspots which are causing issues in terms of scale. Again, this is like in terms of the tech system and architecture, like find for hotspots which are causing issues in scale, right? And there are always few known hotspots, like the database is not doing well, or you have not done caching properly and stuff like that, right? And either you build those skill set internally, which might take time, or you just get some engineers who have seen these problems before, and they'll really bring in that culture of solving it, right? And iterating it and doing performance testing and all those kind of things, right? So that's just not been our approach. I think that has worked well. Maybe we could be more aggressive about it, but otherwise, this sort of iteration is really useful.
What about people, Shashank? What about people? Like people,
yeah, I think
how do you
people
scale
one is
people?
a lot more tricky. And
Yes.
I think most founders, don't really think as much about their people scale as they should probably, right? I think we have experimented a lot, and what I realized, like as I think the biggest thing that we probably got right after almost 2.5 years of experimentation is ensuring that the teams can function independently and we can get out of their way, right? So as long as we have like people or teams or pods or squads or whatever, right? If they can work by themselves without supervision, and we are able to put out a good way to enforce quality standards or culture values, right? Or some sort of framework around how they should think about taking decisions, right? It really works, right? It really works well in terms of scaling with people, right? So, but it's a very tricky process to get there. So you have to be really patient and not give up. And I think it almost took us like, I think in terms of quarters, like it took us like almost like 9 quarters to get it extremely right from something like 2017 to 18, 19. And that base has held up. So I think when pandemic happened and last 4 years, like our prioritization framework, the way we set up teams, the way we develop code, the way we prioritize, all of these things are fairly predictable in terms of the process now, and run by themselves, right? And people don't come to me like I need this approval, right? Or I need your guidance on how to do this, right? So while that help might be available for of course a lot of newcomers in the organization, they need that. But anyone who has spent like 6 to 9 months become like fairly quickly like they know like what to do about doing it.
Interesting. Gaurav, how do you do performance management, man? Let's talk about that.
Oh,
because
man. Yeah, that's a tough problem. So look, how do we do performance? Look,
okay. Top 3 things which you think people should feel like. I'm sorry.
No, so look, I want to echo what Shashank said, is that when you're scaling, right, I think you're bursting at the seams everywhere, right? Your culture is going for a toss, your hiring is going for a toss, your comp is going for a toss, your quality is probably going for a toss. And I think the only thing that you can do is you can enjoy the scaling, right? You can understand these things are meant to happen. And one by one, go after the things that are really important to fix, and then fix them and move on to the second thing, right? So for instance, culture is really important. You want to make sure that regardless of how fast you're scaling, you don't want to screw up your hiring process, etc. Right? So you got to put some checks and balances in there. You have to make sure that there's a process through which people get interviewed. And we've made those mistakes too, right? Where people will try and short circuit the recruitment process because they really badly need a person, right? And it's almost always backfired. Or they will give, appraisals which don't make any sense. And it again backfires, right? So you have to go and sort of set in some checks and balances in place. So I think, no point thinking too much. When you're scaling, enjoy the scaling, right? Understand that it's going to come apart in every single way, and just be patient and go fix things one by one. But coming back to performance, what we are trying to do now at 1MG from a performance standpoint, and look, again, it only makes sense because we are a large organization which needs to do it in a certain way, is we are trying to move to a continuous performance evaluation process. We haven't done it for the whole company, but we are trying out with the technology team first. And what we are doing is that we are basically doing performance evals every sprint, right? So once a sprint happens, the manager is best equipped to actually evaluate the engineer or the whole, sprint team, pods, etc. What we've done is that we've basically defined checkpoints. So sprint is a checkpoint, quarter is a checkpoint, 6 month is a checkpoint, and then annual appraisal is a checkpoint. All of those inputs go in by levels. And you can only do that if you actually first start with defining roles and responsibilities for every level that you have in the organization. So we first started with there. We made sure every manager, every lead understood what it meant for an engineer to perform at a certain level. Made sure that in sprints, then they were evaluated. This is what my HR BP does, that he basically gets all these reviews and ratings in. We actually have a quarterly conversation around it where we stack rank people as well to understand, who are, top 20 people who are, let's say, who are struggling from a performance standpoint, need help, etc. We also figure out who has sort of fallen off, used to be a great performer last quarter, is not such a great performer this quarter. Then we go back and figure out what happened. We also know who went up. So all of these conversations then happen. And then what happens eventually at the 6-month and 12-month is we collate all this data and say that, hey, this is what your rating is going to be, right? So this is the system that we are putting in place for the technology team, and then eventually rolling out to the whole company as well.
Wow, damn. I think this conversation can go on for ages because there are so many things I want to touch
Yeah.
right now. But I think we're getting over. I want to hear from Hemesh a little bit, and then we'll just get we'll just wrap it up because I know you three are super busy people, and I have pulled you out of your busy schedule. So I do not want to hold you for long, and I know that you will not go, but I understand that I really respect you for what you have done over here. And please, Hemesh, please go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to sort of talk about is you can't put out all the fires because like you'll put out one and there'll be 10 more that will come up. So forget about that. Like stop stressing yourself that you will be able to manage it down to 0. That's not going to happen. Another thing I feel, I think especially people who have worked at largish companies and who have been very hardcore engineers, they get really, really stressed about technical debt. That, hey, if we do this, that is not going to work, it will fail, and this is not going to scale, and so on and so forth. I think solve the problem of today when you are growing fast, because if you don't scale today, you're going to literally die. So you can, if you survive, you can solve all those problems. You'll get enough time in the world, you'll get enough resources in the world to solve all those problems. But if you don't survive, if you're not able to scale, you're going to die. So I think if you just put that perspective in, and that survival is the goal early on, I think it becomes very clear that what should be a focus and what not. Technical debt can be solved, survival cannot be solved, right? So
oh wow, yes, I like that.
Right. So I think that's how, yeah.
Yeah, Hemesh, talk to us about performance management a little bit, because I think that is one of the biggest things. What happens is, and I'll give you a little bit anecdotal experience. What happens is, like, when you have up to 60, 70 people, you know everyone. You know what they're doing. So you kind of know how they're performing, and you kind of like go and can have one-on-one conversations. They also know that they know what they have done, and they know that you know that what they have done. So they kind of accept this. After some time, it kind of becomes a little bit problematic. You kind of become this groom or bride in a marriage where everybody knows you, but you don't know anybody. And that's a problem. And when those conversations starts happening, how do you objectively do performance review of person? And they really need that because they need to know how can they grow. They need to know what they should do to grow. And every time, and I'll give you this caveat as well. I don't look for the people who only optimize for number of money. I also look for people who optimize for fun. So that is my way. But what you guys have done, like what is your most closely objective way of trying to do performance review?
I think so. Just I have one point in this. I think our performance review is quite standard, like 360-degree, and do that like at the end of the year types. To be honest, I think that is fine, but we also believe in like giving feedback real time. It's not really a formal evaluation. It's more of like, you have to sort of give feedback as and when you see a problem. You have to sort of give help. As soon as you see somebody is struggling, you have to make sure that, you assign them a mentor, you assign them somebody who's sort of giving them help, like not formally putting them on a PIP. It's early that they need help. They're struggling. You need to give them help as soon as possible. That is going to increase their chances of success. The third thing that we sort of do is we look at the overall performance a lot more closely, like how's the entire pod performing, and that sort of puts the focus of performance on the engineering manager, on the pod owner, that hey, I need to make sure that everybody in my pod is performing to their best level for me to succeed. So that I think has worked really well for us. And even with the PM, right? Like the engineering manager cannot succeed on their own, or the PM cannot succeed on their own. You have to succeed together. And if
Absolutely.
that is anything is stopping you from doing that, raise that or ask for help as early as possible. So that is basically what has worked for us. But yeah.
Shashank, you are running very large org. I want to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I think close to like 1,000 engineers and product managers and whatnot, right? So
I hear 1,000, right?
So yeah, I think that's the number that I've also heard like in last 1 month. So I've also come to accept it. So I think we experimented quite a bit with our appraisal process, and I think different teams did their competencies, and we went through a 360-degree process, and all sort of calibrations and everything. I kind of think now it's become much simpler in nature, which I also like. Is that every review we ask people to talk about like what is the impact that they have created. And it's actually very interesting. So at the end, because people don't think about it actively, right? And don't think about like what is their career aspiration. So when it comes time to review, we ask them to talk about like, okay, what is the impact that they have created, and then they go and talk to their product manager. Hey, like, what is the work that I'm doing? Like, what is the impact that I'm creating, right? And then ask them to talk about like, what do you want to do in future, right? Like, what do you want to get to, as a developer or as a product manager, right? And I think these questions force people to think about themselves a lot more, rather than just talking about like, okay, am I writing my code well, right? Or am I, writing my spec well, which are also important as qualities, right? But I think in the process of like thinking about impact, I think people get to realize like ultimately that what truly matters is what what is the value that they're contributing, right? And I've seen like now people becoming a lot more conscious and asking questions like when any especially good engineers, right, when they don't like their current team, or they have been in their team for some time, they start looking out. They actually ask the team like, okay, what is the impact that you're creating, right? And the product manager is like used to answering that question from leadership, but when an engineer comes and asks that question, they get surprised, like, what is happening? Right? So, so it's become really well, and I think our promotions and everything also has become very simpler, like because we are able to very clearly say like, okay, look, at the end of the day, like what really matters is like you're doing some good work, right? Have you done good work, right? And do we see that you have the qualities to get to the next level? And it's a very simple conversation in that sense, and it just works now, right? So earlier we used to have a very longish process, and obviously peer feedback and everything, we collect all of those things. But the conversation with manager has become like very simple. Just talk about like are you doing good work and creating good impact, right? Are you moving in a direction of where you want to move, right? And how can we enable you better? And there are obviously like things around like the typical tactical things around getting better as an engineer, right? But this thing now has been there for 2 cycles, and it's worked. This framework is working across functions. I don't need to think about as a founder like, okay, what is the designer supposed to do, or what is the product manager supposed to do? Like obviously people can figure that out, but if you are creating good impact, like you must be doing something right. So it doesn't matter like, what skills you bring to the table. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Dude, I'm gonna take you up on that. I'm gonna come back to you and we're gonna write a blog about it. It's like this culture on I can question somebody and I can actually ask and I can actually get an answer out of it. Whatever my position is amazing. Like it is really good to have that kind of culture, because traditionally in our country, or like traditionally this hasn't happened that much. Authoritative regimes have prevailed, and this I see as a very cooler head has prevailed. Some cool minds have prevailed. So I want to talk to you. I'll set up in next 1 or 2 months. We go over this with somebody and like write about it. Hey, I want to just go to last to Gaurav, and then we'll just wrap it up. Take maybe one question from the audience. Gaurav, what do you think about that?
No, I think I'll I don't have much to add on the performance side. I think Shashank and Hemesh have summed it up really well. So yeah, go to the audience.
Okay, Divya, so thank you all three. I would let Divya take at least one question from audience and we
All
go
right.
round
All right.
and robin. Yeah.
I know we've already gone over the time, so I'll just take one question. So Sukant has asked, how did you decide the tech, languages, tools, platforms, etc., that will scale at milestones? What are certain flag posts at which you reevaluate the tech that powers your next level of vision? It's a very layered question. If anybody wants to take this up and want to give it a shot, any of you.
Yeah, when you're starting up, right, and in the initial 2-3 years, 4 years, honestly, I think the best tech stack is something that you know well and you can, ship fast, right? Instead of trying to learn a new stack, right? If, as an engineer, I'm sure people work in their past jobs, right? So if you have, the founder speed really, really matters, right? So of all the things, right? And this is like a counterintuitive thing that, really good engineers that work with me, I tell them, we build our payment systems in PHP and it still served us beautifully, right? So because a lot of engineers think that, it's difficult to build like a great system in PHP. And obviously I can give them examples about Facebook and whatnot, but, people have their biases, right? But
Wikipedia, dude.
Wikipedia, yeah. So there are a lot of good examples, obviously. But people have their own biases, right? Especially people who who might come from, let's say, Java world, because they're used to like Java being really sturdy, robust, scalable language, right? And PHP probably is like a kid in comparison, right? But it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is that you are able to ship fast, right? And as a founder, if you are really familiar with something, I think the initial years, that's what matters more, that your team is comfortable with the tech stack and you can ship, right? Instead of trying to fight and learn a new system. When, of course, when you start scaling, then, you can have a reevaluation and have a thought process. And, we shifted from PHP to Golang sometime in 2018-19. We took that decision and, we kind of changed all our systems to Golang over next 3-4 years, right? And we chose it, obviously, because it offers certain advantages. It's a typed language and whatnot, right? So, there's a good technical analysis for it, right? But when you're scaling, you can obviously fall back to like a more trusted language or, or more one of the newer languages like Golang or Rust or whatever, and again, like that also has to be based on a little bit opinionated. It can't be like just technical analysis. It has to be, any technical choice has to be opinionated in nature. So you'll also have to kind of do that and decide that from a long-term vision of the company.
All right, then. And there are plenty of questions. Sorry, go on, Ajay. You were saying
something. Does Hemesh or Gaurav have a different view? Like I kind of agree with Shashank.
No, I just want to add one thing. I think this is one of those things you cannot go wrong with. Like if you can build, I think you can replace it. It can evolve. It can change. Like tech stack is literally absolutely like the last thing you need to worry about when you're starting up.
Agree 100%. Agree 100%. Just and as I said, there's no reason to overthink these decisions. A lot of these are so like we have made so many technology stack poor decisions over the years, and we've just what Hemesh said earlier. If you just focus on surviving, everything else you'll figure out over time.
Absolutely. I'll give you my distilled lesson on this is like every decision you make at any point of time in your startup journey is the right decision because it's based on the information you had that point of time. Right? First thing is that, and second, language or tool they don't scale. Actually, people scale language and tools. And if you got right people, you don't need to have right tool. There's never any right tool. It's always right people who take you through journey. Anyway, thank you guys. Thanks a lot. It is amazing conversation. And I think we can go on for like another half an hour because I've not touched many things. I want to talk about, many more things. I want to talk about product management. I want to talk about program management. I want to talk about bringing new changes. I want to talk about employee onboarding because that is also a scaling org. I want to talk about a lot of non-functional things like how do you keep the culture going. But we will come back again, most probably in like 3-4 months. I'll bring these 3 again, most probably, if we can. And we'll talk about those rest of things. Until then, I would like to say thank you to all 3 of you. Thanks a lot for coming on such a short notice. Thanks a lot. It's been my honor to host you over here.
Thank you so
Ajey.
much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Shashank. Thank you, Hemesh, and thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you.
We'll try our best to make this happen again with plenty of questions, plenty of topics yet to be discussed. But we really appreciate you taking out times from your busy schedules. I know you already spent almost 1.5 hours for us, so really grateful for that. Thank you so much to take out time and do this on a Thursday.
Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.